Sarit, thank you for joining us on Spectator TV. You're in northern Israel at the moment, only 12 kilometres from the border with Lebanon. Currently, there are lots of attacks going there from Hezbollah, with Israel responding in turn. Can you describe what the situation is like up there at the moment?
I can tell you that tonight we hardly slept. We heard the fightings. It was difficult to explain to my little girl. This is from a personal point of view. To describe it, it's kind of a low-scale war. I'll put it maybe this way, a limited war, because since the war started, up north, there are daily attacks that are coming from Lebanon, either anti-tanks, UAVs, mortars, missiles, infiltration, you name it. While most of the attacks are anti-tanks and mortars, and most of these, or actually all of these, are coming from Hezbollah. Some infiltrations were carried out by Islamic Jihad, and some missiles were launched by Hamas as well. But the leading player against the state of Israel from the Israeli-Lebanese border is Hezbollah. We also had a few launching of missiles from Syria, 3 times until now. And what is actually happening, that very quickly IDF understood that it needs to be dealt, and every squad of Hezbollah that reaches to the area of the border and tries to launch whatever it is, whether it's anti-tank or mortars, or sometimes they even try to target our UAVs with the surface-to-air missiles. All of these are dealt by the IDF, and the IDF is destroying these squads and killing Hezbollah operatives. So in many places, when I hear international media, it is reported as exchange of fire. But I don't accept this framing, since I think it's not exactly exchange of fire. There is no interest for the IDF to exchange fire with Hezbollah, and there is no interest for the IDF to open another front. But this second front is already active from day one against us, and that's why eventually it needs to be dealt. As for the civilian part, 60,000 Israelis were evacuated from the communities next to the border, 0 to 5 kilometers. I myself live about 9 kilometers from the border, so me and my family, we were not evacuated. But the feeling here is, as I've said, is a feeling of a low-scale or a limited war, because it's not quiet. It's not a border of peace and quietness, and I don't live anymore in the peaceful community I used to live, because there are soldiers everywhere, and it is clear to us that the IDF is prepared for something much greater than maybe Hezbollah is planning.
I was going to say, so Hassan Nasrallah, the General Secretary of Hezbollah, is due to speak tomorrow. Do you get the sense, I mean, obviously we're talking ahead of that, we can't know exactly what he's going to say, but can you maybe just talk us through about what Hezbollah are thinking? Do you think they have an incentive to expand this into a full-scale war rather than fire and probing at the moment?
So first, I agree that we don't know what he is going to say tomorrow, and I would say even more than that, maybe even tomorrow he will not give us all the answers that everybody in the world is like kind of waiting for what Nasrallah will say. Okay? He may leave us with the question marks. But what we see clearly is that Iran is pushing its proxies to become part of this campaign, because this was the plan right from the beginning. And here, which brings me to another point, this is not a war between Israel and Hamas. This is very misleading. Hamas didn't initiate all of that by itself. This is a war between Iran and the Western values. And Iran, in the past decade, built its capabilities to create a multi-front campaign against the state of Israel from various fronts, meaning Yemen, which is already active, Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, even Iraq, and maybe even inside Israel. This is what they want. Okay? The capabilities exist in most of these places. Hezbollah, excellent example. The firepower of Hezbollah is 10 times more than the firepower of Hamas. And until this moment, we don't see any messages that are coming out either from Iran or from Hezbollah that are saying, okay, we want to calm down, maybe we should stop. No, we don't see all of that. The propaganda that goes out of Hezbollah is a propaganda that supports the expansion of the war, they published today, giving you two examples, published today a video that support Yemen under the flag, all of us is Yemen, as if Israel attacked Yemen or whatever, we have no business with that. But we were attacked already 4 times by drones and missiles from Yemen. And another video that was published at the beginning of this week by the propaganda of Hezbollah, emphasizing the capabilities of Hezbollah to carry out exactly what Hamas has already executed on October 7th, while the whole message of this video is that Hezbollah warriors are willing to die for the cause, which is getting to Jerusalem and killing Israelis. That's kind of the bottom line of 3 minutes video.
So if the war does expand and Hezbollah launch a full-scale invasion or warfare, how prepared do you think Israel is to fight a war on 2 fronts?
It's quite a challenge, of course, definitely when we speak of ground forces. That's why I think that the IDF is aware of what is happening up north and the fact that, I'm saying that as a resident of the Galilee, we can no longer live with this monster that, just end the war. And one day when they will decide, they will massacre us the same way they did in the area of Gaza. Israel must be prepared to deal with the challenge as it is from the north as well. As I've said, it's a challenge of ground invasion of Hezbollah commando fighters, and it's a challenge of the missiles and the drones. Some of them are accurate. In the hands of Hezbollah, 200,000 different kind of missiles and drones. I think what the IDF is now doing is prioritizing, saying, okay, we must push forward in Gaza. There is no way Hamas will be able to survive this. This is something that is unheard of and unacceptable, and we must get rid of the monster over there. And afterwards, we'll see what could be done and in which way it could be done up north. But again, I want to remind everybody that meanwhile, there are 60,000 Israelis that cannot go back to their homes up north here because of the threat of the anti-tanks.
I see. We should turn for a little bit to the situation in Gaza. It's been reported this morning that Israeli troops have reached the edge of Gaza City. Is the perception in Israel that the southern campaign is doing well, that it's sort of meeting its targets at taking on Hamas?
Yes, I think the impression is that it is doing well. I think there is a consensus, and we Israelis, we usually disagree upon everything, but here there is a consensus among Israelis that after what happened, there is no way that Hamas will stay, and we must do whatever we can to eliminate the threat. I always compare it to what happened in World War II. Like, did anybody even imagine a scenario that after all what the Nazis had done, they will be able to stay on power? Or that Hitler will stay on power? It was clear to everybody that this enemy should be fought until its defeat. And this is what is clear today to the Israelis. And I hope that eventually it will be clear to the world, because Hamas atrocities, as I've said, we were near them. We were meters away from them. But actually, the hatred is not against Israelis and Jews alone. By the way, Arabs were killed by Hamas as well. This hatred is also against everything the West represents. I see support to Hamas coming from LGBTQ or queers, coming from people that believe in democracy and in freedom in various ways. Hamas is not part of what you believe in. Completely not. And if these people will go to visit Gaza as an act of solidarity, they will get killed by Hamas.
Yeah, so there seems to be sort of a discordancy almost, which is that Israel seems very focused, seems very united on the necessity of tackling Hamas. Yet in the wider West now, there seems to be a sort of wavering of support for Israel's campaign. So yesterday we had President Joe Biden say he supported a humanitarian pause. I mean, what did you make of his comments?
Look, I totally understand the need to meet the needs of the Gazians with regard to humanitarian need, but I think that eventually, and it is also due to international law, we must meet the humanitarian needs of the hostages as well. So, okay, if humanitarian aid is getting into Gaza, the Red Cross should be able to meet our hostages that are in the hands of Hamas. I think this is something that makes sense. It's humanitarian. It's about humans' life. And I don't understand why these two demands are not going hand in hand.
Do you think, though, in terms of, do you get the sense that Western support is going to waver, though, now? I mean, we're going to see this more and more with when Israel's bombing campaign does have a high civilian toll in Gaza. Do you think we're going to see the West sort of shy away from supporting Israel more and more? It's becoming more difficult for Israel.
We already see that, unfortunately. And I must say something around that. You mentioned the amount of casualties in Gaza, which everybody is sorry for that, okay? Again, we have no business in killing Gazians because it doesn't serve, before morality, okay? It doesn't serve our interests. If we want to defeat Hamas, we want to kill as less Gazians as possible. We understand that the way to defeat Hamas goes through as less casualties as possible. We all understand that, okay? But what Hamas is doing is using its own people as human shields. Its headquarters and tunnels are based below the homes. So what the world should do is hold Hamas accountable rather than hold Israel accountable. And one more thing around that, Israel is not occupying Gaza in any way since 2005. We are not there. There was no IDF soldiers in Gaza since 2005, except for a specific operation that again happened due to atrocities that were carried out by Hamas, and 20 years of rockets that were launched by Hamas and Islamic Jihad to the state of Israel against the communities. Children in Israel grew up afraid to go to the bathroom because of the sirens. People need to address all of that. So I think that the international pressure here is on the wrong player. There should be an international pressure, but there should be international pressure on Hamas itself because he is the one who is putting his own people at risk. He is the one who is doing that deliberately in order to escape from a defeat. And they don't care about the human lives of the Gazians. We call them to evacuate from the war zones. Hamas blocked their way with evacuation. Everybody's talking about the fuel. Hamas has enough fuel. It stole the fuel of the civilians in order to continue to fight us. All of this should be addressed, and I think it's very important to look at the full picture while we speak about the collateral damage and people getting killed. Moreover, I have, just a little bit of a question here. Here in Israel, we had a horrifying massacre of Israelis. And it is, until today, almost a month had passed, and we don't have the exact number of how many people were killed. Hamas is publishing numbers every day. How do they know how many people were killed in each and every attack? How do they know that these were all civilians? The numbers that are coming out of Gaza include the 1,500 terrorists that invaded into Israel and slaughtered our families. The numbers that are coming out of Gaza include the Hamas terrorists that are fighting against the IDF now. Nobody knows what's the numbers exactly, the distinction between civilians and terrorists, how they were killed. Nobody knows, and everybody just view Israel as responsible. And I think it's important to look at the details in this picture for all of us to be capable of defeating terror, because Israel had no interest to go to a military operation in Gaza. And we are doing that because everything that happened, we are doing that because we cannot tolerate another massacre.